You told me also at one point that you went to Romania
Yes.
on a mission trip.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
How did that take place?
Well, when we were at Enon, the youth pastor at the time, um, there was there were sort of groups at that specific time. There were groups that were doing different mission trips. There was we had a group that went up north and done a mission trip, and we had a group that went sort of other places. And our youth pastor felt a calling to put together a youth mission trip. And so I'm not exactly sure the logistics of how it got put together, but we prayed about it, and Romania was what was picked. And so I'd never been on a plane, never been overseas, and to me it felt I felt God calling me to do it, but also I seen it as an opportunity to just do something new. And so I signed up. We ended up raising the money we needed.
Now, were you still in high school at the time?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yes. It was my junior. Well, yeah, it was my junior year, but we were transitioning from juniors to seniors.
Right. Okay.
So the mission trip was during the summer, so we didn't have to worry about school. I had actually saved up enough PTO time at work so that I could take the time. Now when I say work, I didn't have a specific career job. I was just sort of working fast food or whatever. So they sort of let me do really whatever as long as I gave them a heads up. And so thankfully that worked out. I didn't have to worry about work, being in trouble with work or anything like that or getting fired. So I had PTO to use there. And then I remember we had multiple meetings leading up. The biggest hurdle that I had leading up to the trip was getting my passport. That was all new to me. Thankfully I won't say we had a class. But we gathered and we had sort of a meeting and went over specifically exactly how we needed to get our passport, the tips and tricks to get it back. I not really quickly, but in a timely manner. And so I applied for my passport, finally got it. And so then essentially everything was set. The trip was ready to go. We flew out of Charlotte and flew to first Munich, Germany. We had about a 2-hour wait in Germany, and then we flew to Cluj, Romania. I did get sick on the second flight because it was a smaller plane.
Oh,
yeah, it was. Yeah. What's even crazier is the flight from Charlotte to Munich was 8.5 hours, and I had no trouble at all.
yeah.
And in fact, we actually had multiple instances where we ran into some really rough turbulence.
Yeah.
I just felt like I was on a roller coaster.
Yeah.
And that's sort of how I seen it. I was like, oh, we're on a roller coaster. We're all right. But yeah, the second plane, that one was because I ended up getting a window seat.
That one got you.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. I didn't get like too terribly sick, but I didn't feel good.
Yeah.
What the really big kicker though was essentially we had been up because it was an 8-hour flight. I got up super early that morning to fly out of Charlotte. It was an 8.5 hour flight to Munich. We had about a 2-hour wait, and then we flew from there to Cluj, Romania. And when we got there, it was like middle of the day, and so we had to stay up for another,
Yeah.
8 hours, and
Yeah.
we're like, oh my goodness.
How long did you stay?
We stayed for 2 weeks. It was a
Okay.
2-week mission trip.
So you had about enough time to get used to the time change, and then you had to fly back.
Correct. Correct. Yep.
So what did you do while you were there? What was the purpose of the trip? Focus of the trip.
The focus of the trip was there was the missionary that we were with was working with a group of gypsies, and they were gypsy converted Christians, if that makes sense, and they were trying to start a church, and at the time they were just sort of meeting at the missionary's house. They would meet out in public places if they could. The sad thing is the gypsies are not very. They're not very popular amongst the Romanian people, and so it was very difficult for them to meet in public places. So, a lot of the services we had, we done sort of like a Bible study every night, and that took place at the missionary's house, and so it wasn't a mission trip of like, oh, we're going to build a church or we're going to help do this. It was more along the lines of just sort of, there were things we helped with, but it wasn't physical things. It was more of ministry, and so at the same time, of course, we got to do a little bit of traveling. There was actually a Romanian church. It was mainly made up of Romanians that we got to go visit. That was I believe it was a Wednesday night. They had essentially a Wednesday night service, and then that Sunday, one of the Sundays, they had a Sunday service that we got to go to. And I tell you what, it's different hearing the Word of God preached through a different language that you do not understand.
Yeah.
But thankfully, the missionary was there. He didn't translate, but he translated afterwards and gave a sort of a overview of what was preached about. Of course, we had our Bible, so he told us which verses we were looking at, but it was very different.
So you got a Cliff Notes version of the sermon.
Yeah.
Now there's an idea. Yeah, I said it.
Oh, me.
So, how big of an impact did that have on you?
It was a fairly big impact. And it wasn't, it was mainly, what really got me was the fact of, we were amongst gypsies, we were amongst people who, a group of people who were essentially looked down upon. And it gave me insight on what real persecution looks like.
Yeah.
It gave me a better benefit of living in America, and there were other small things that it opened up, but those were two of the biggest things. It was very sad, seeing how these people were treated, and it's not as, when we went, it wasn't as bad as it used to be. Used to be people would get killed for being gypsies, or they would be. It was essentially their society was segregated, and so it was very difficult to wrap my head around that. And the Romanians had this belief of how gypsies were. And what was also really awesome was to see how God can change hearts, because one of the guys that was helping the missionary minister to the gypsies was a Romanian, and he told us that before he became a Christian, like, he didn't want anything to do with the gypsies. He just thought they were dirty people. He didn't, thieves, people that didn't belong in society. And here he is, a pastor of a Romanian church now, ministering to gypsies, essentially at times living amongst them.
Yeah.
And so that was really powerful to see, what God can do to someone's heart. And also to see what God can do to a group of people.
So you and your family wound up over here at Maplewood.
Yep.
And don't want to get into the details of that. That's not why we're doing this podcast. But almost immediately, you jumped onto the AV team here.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Mom and Dad come over, and it was probably about a year I was at Enon by myself, without my parents. It wasn't that I didn't enjoy being at Enon. It was very hard to just be going to a church without your family. And so I made the decision to move from Enon to Maplewood.
Now, you guys were here during the pandemic, weren't you? It seems like I remember you.
Mom and Dad were.
Okay. All right. Okay.
But I was still at Enon during that time.
Right. So you came over here,
Mm-hmm.
and you bumped your way into the sound booth.
Yeah. Well, that's sort of.
Hey, move over there.
I would say that sort of worked its way out. I told Dad that I wanted to come to Maplewood, and I told him, I said, I want to get involved, but I don't know who to talk to. Well, obviously, Dad is on the praise team, and so he talked to Todd Phillips, and Todd told me, he said, just go back there, hang out. I said, okay. Well, I'd never met Kendall. I'm sure it was a little awkward for him because I just showed up one Sunday and stood there and watched him.
Yeah.
I introduced myself, but I slowly sort of worked my way in. Andrew Overby used to do the cameras, and now he's the acoustic guitarist on the praise team. So the AV team actually needed an extra person to be able to fully run everything with, without feeling rushed or pressured, because it's a lot. It's a lot to do pro presenter. It's a lot to do the cameras. It's not as easy as it looks. It's not as easy as just pushing a button. So they needed help, and they welcomed me in, and I really liked doing sound, but at the same time I knew they needed help with other things. So you don't, as long as I'm serving in that group, that's all that matters to me. I could care less what I'm doing. Now it's nice to know how to do everything. It's nice to know, have an idea of what to do. Because like I said, some Sundays, Kendall's not here, so I have to fill in for him. I'm not as good as Kendall, but I know what, I can get us through a service without major issues.
That's a bigger thing than you can imagine.
Yep. And so, and the biggest thing is working with tech, electronics and tech is not, it's not easy. There's a lot of issues that can come up. And so sometimes, some Sundays we're back there and y'all don't know it, but we're dealing with like 5 or 6 issues we're trying to work through. But we still, nobody knows because we're doing, I won't say we're doing a good. I don't want to boast, but we're doing a good enough job that, we're not letting those issues interfere with the service.
Imagine working with electronics and soundboards and all that kind of stuff when you don't know what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Ask Todd Phillips how many times I've called him in a panic. I can't hear through my headphones. Are they plugged up? Oh man.
Yep. And that's sort of the awesome. And I don't mean to make it sound like it's overcomplicated, because it's not. It's just once you got the basics down, and especially if you're having some issues, there's basic, I guess, troubleshooting that you can do that applies across the board. One being, is it plugged in? Is it turned on? My favorite is, have you turned it off and turned it back on yet?
All right, so your dad is he sings in the praise group.
Yep.
And it's my understanding that you also have that kind of ability.
I won't say I'm as good as Dad, but I can hold a note or two.
Did you hear that, Maplewood? Jacob Ridings can sing.
Yeah, I guess you could say it runs in the family a little bit.
Okay, so there's you.
Yep.
And there's Andrew playing the guitar. Adam plays bass. Jesse plays cajon.
I'm more of a backup vocalist. But, if it's God's will, he'll give me the will to do it.
Just sit there and let me volunteer you for this.
Don't you mean voluntold?
Well, I don't have the ability to tell you to do it. I'm just very highly suggesting it. In all seriousness, you are part of the younger core here at Maplewood.
Yes.
What would you like to see Maplewood? Where would you like to see Maplewood 5 to 10 years from now? What's your vision?
Growth. I would really like to see growth. I can feel it. Maplewood's thriving. God's getting ready to move in a big way. But for me, I would like to see growth, not just growth in general, but as some have mentioned, growth in the youth, growth in younger families, because that's the future. That's the future of Maplewood. Like you said, I can't remember when it was. You spoke up in front of the church. I don't know what that is exactly. But I can tell you this: we can put our heads together and we can pray about it, and God will reveal it to us. But growth is what I would like to see. And not just because, that allows us to grow. It allows us to grow more. It allows us to serve more of the community. With more people, allows bigger opportunities to serve. And that's just in general growth,
Anything else you'd like to add? Anything else you'd like to say?
Well, you mentioned that I sing, and I think we talked about this sort of briefly when you talked to me a couple days ago. I was in a youth band at Enon.
Did you hear that, Maplewood? He was in a youth band. This is not a drill.
It was something that us as a youth, we knew that we had the talent. We had a guitarist. We had an individual to play the cajon. We had individuals who were willing to sing. And one thing we really wanted to do was at our youth, I guess, like Sunday nights and Wednesday nights, we wanted to incorporate worship music into our little Bible studies and our group sessions. And so me and a couple of the people, a couple of the youth, most of them I went to school with, actually all of them, except for one. He was a little bit older than us, but he grew up through the Enon youth, so everybody knew him really well. We put together a youth band, and so it was me and three girls that were vocalists, and like I said, we had an individual who played the cajon and a gentleman that played the guitar, and so unfortunately we got that band put together a little too late, because shortly after, about a year or two after we got it put together, the guitarist felt led to be called into worship ministry and ended up moving on and becoming a worship leader at another church. And the band sort of fell apart as, most of us started. I won't say we weren't all serious about our futures, and what I mean by that is schooling, figuring out what we want to do as a career. We were all it was our sophomore, junior, I think, year. So we were sort of getting into that sort of serious time of our high school career of, hey, we need to figure out what we're going to do for a living, what we're going to go to school for. And so the band sort of broke apart. The only reason it broke apart was there wasn't many individuals who were, or there wasn't many youth who were, instrumentally and talented. What I mean by that is we just didn't have anybody to play the guitar. We didn't have anybody who could really play the cajon. I mean, I know I won't make it sound like it's easy, but at the same time, if you can keep a beat, you can make a simple beat, and that, that's all we really need. But the individual, the gentleman we had that played the cajon, he played it more like a drum set. He knew all the,
Yeah.
He knew where to hit it and what time to hit it, and so he made it sound real good. But we just didn't have anybody to sort of step up, and so we didn't really have anybody to pass it along to. So
Okay. All right.
But yeah,
This is my challenge to you.
Okay.
You know what I'm fixing to say.
I know exactly what you're fixing to say.
It's like you're prophesying. You know exactly what's about to come out of my mouth. I challenge you to do that here at Maplewood.
Okay.
You put that together.
Okay.
And play music that you can relate to.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying Striper or anything like that. But yeah, I would challenge you to at least consider it.
I definitely will,
because there are some people. I mean, there's some talent here.
Oh yeah, I've seen
if I went to certain younger members of my family and said, "Hey, why don't you?" Oh, Dad. Hey, if Jacob went to him and said, "Hey, why don't we hey, that sounds like a great idea." Now, do you play disc golf?
No, I do not.
Okay, all right. Well, maybe you could bond over that. I don't know. But yeah, I would challenge you to do that.
Okay.
All right?
Sounds good.
Perfect. Good deal. That was awesome.
Well, thank you.
If you're looking for a church home,
if you want to be part of a family,
if you're looking for a place to grow,
if you're looking for a place to worship,
if you have questions about your faith,
if you'd like to talk to somebody about being a Christian,
come see us at Maplewood.